You are listening to another episode of the What's Next podcast, and today the role of your accountant. Now, we're not going to throw all accountants under the bus, Phil, or are we?
Stay tuned to find out. Controversial topic at hand, I believe, and if you're easily offended and you're in the industry, maybe it's time just to pick another podcast to listen to.
I have heard that some of the accountants that do listen have been enjoying some of the shout-outs that they've had, reading between the lines that it's for them, to shout out to all of them.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Nice to know that we do have some listeners in the industry.
None in Parnell, though.
No, and no emails from accountants to say, oh, hey, look, really like this, or hey, I've got this from a client and I've listened to it, and yeah, no, good.
Well, to all of the accountants that are listening, remember your CPD log was due at 31 June?
30 June.
30 June.
Only 30 days in June.
Yeah, that's
Whoops.
it. So make sure you put the What's Next podcast as one of your non-verifiable, or even verifiable. We can send a certificate for at least there's 2 per week. You know, you could probably do an hour, so 52 hours, and we'll happily verify that. And send us an email to request a certificate. They're $1,000 plus GST per episode.
I thought you were going to say $1,000 for the year for CPD, but I was going to say, look,
That's
CPD
cheap.
log at nextadvisory.nz if you're interested.
Yeah.
And we can get that sent out to you.
Well, mate, the old role of your accountant, as always, there's a little bit of difference between business owners that we speak to in terms of what is my accountant's responsibility, what's my responsibility, what is the role of an accountant. Now, everybody in our industry does things differently to start with. So, as we've often said, you want to find an accountant that you're going to relate to and that they're going to get you your business. And to get that, you probably have to pay a bit more money than just going to any accountant, where you will end up being delegated down to somebody who has the capacity at the time that you come on board as a client, and then they will look after you, but they will probably leave for London in a year's time, or they will leave for the BAS team or the audit team or for marketing because they realise accounting's shit and they should be doing.
I was about to say that bid accounting and go and get a real job.
Yeah, you know, so you get passed around, then you start getting gutted. If you're paying not much for your accounting, probably expect that
Not
stuff
much.
to happen. Yeah.
I think the 2 key words in what you've just mentioned were relatable and understand you. I think there's a stackload of accountants out there for businesses, and they've got to be on your wavelength. And you might be a super geek and a super nerd and that kind of thing. That's cool. That's your jam. Find an accountant that likes your style. You might be on the other end of the spectrum, much like Luke, and a little bit kind of crazy out there. Find somebody that fits that mold. I mean, there are accountants out there like Luke that do exist.
Colourful.
And yes, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they've got to be relatable. And if you don't find that you've got a really good relationship with your accountant, find someone out there that is. And then the second one is that accountant that you do find that's relatable has got to be able to understand not only you, but your business. And every business is different, and the way that a business makes money is different. And you've got to understand that, because if you don't understand that, that's where the mistakes and, unfortunately, the shitty advice can come through, because they just don't have that understanding to give you something that makes sense to you and your business.
We are chartered accountants at Next Advisory, and one of the things that it means you have to follow when you're a chartered accountant is to do work in areas that you actually are competent in.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks for the reminder, Luke. And are we competent to do any of this? I'm just kind of scratching my head.
Well, that's why we stick to things that we know we can do, right? And we will often say, like, no, that's not our thing, that's not our space, and then we will refer it to where you will get better looked after if it's not for us.
The example there would be property, right?
Exactly.
We had no shame in bagging the property industry, but it is not our cup of tea. And the rules, particularly from a tax point of view, are constantly changing. And you've got to be up to date with those so often and understand just all the different implications of those rules. And that's just not our cup of tea. So rather than getting into the detail of understanding those rules, go and find somebody that's actually loving property. And there's plenty of accountants out there that do.
Yeah, and even, tech startups, for instance, or even just startup space, we don't play too much in that space. But there are firms and that's what they do. And then they get really good at it, and that's how they become the authority in that space or have the competence because they're doing it. But I think a lot of what happens in our industry, just like all SMEs and businesses in New Zealand, is we say yes to any work that comes in because I should, I can probably figure it out, and let's have a crack at it. Especially as a traditional firm grows a team, and it's like, they've got capacity, let's say yes to that client. And that can be, I think, where some of the cracks appear as well, where then the client thinks they're going to get service that they're not, or whoever's doing their work hasn't thought about retentions in the construction space, for example, or even just deposits or stock and little things like that, where if you've got a accountant that really gets your business, then they're going to ask questions that they will get you thinking because they probably know how your business works and therefore the tax rules. But often, I hear from people, I thought my accountant would tell me that. Well, unfortunately, newsflash, your accountant probably isn't jumping into your Xero ledger, your MYOB ledger every week or even every month to go and just look at how your business is performing, unless you're paying them to do that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. We did some advisory work for a client recently, so they're not, a business, they're not actually an ongoing client. It was just a one-off piece of work, and jumped into the Xero ledger and had a bit of a poke around. I thought, I'm just curious here. Let's have a look at the user list to see who's in there. And it had all of the names of the people in the accounting firm that were in there, and the person that the business owner that said that was their accountant by name hadn't been into the Xero ledger for over a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. There we go. Well, let's bring it back to some basics, mate. So to educate the listeners out there and the business owners, the main role of an accountant is to ensure that you're compliant with the IRD, is probably how the accountant would see it. Right, we're going to get you on our tax agency list and we're going to do your accounts at the end of the year. We're going to tell you how much tax you've got to pay. You're going to hate us. Then we're going to send you a fee, and then we'll see you again in a year's time and we'll do the same thing. And basically, if you try and do all of that on your own, you can do that, but you might get it wrong. So basically the accountant is selling you a service of staying legal and compliant.
Yep.
And then they give you an extension of time, because when you use an accountant, then you've got longer to file your accounts. If not, you start getting notifications from the IRD, hey, you need to send us your tax return. You start thinking, oh shit, what's all this about? So then you go and get an accountant. Now that is, I think, very baseline level. And then some of them might do your coding for you, your GST returns for you. And you have to have a distinguish between a bookkeeper and an accountant.
Yes.
Is that a half volley for you?
Yeah, I think that's really good. That a lot of people confuse the two. And the accountant is, the traditional accountant in a public firm, whether your tax agent is your keep you out of jail card. They tick that compliance box, make sure your income tax and your GST and your FBT and all that stuff's done, and you pay your tax when you need to pay your tax. Although we'll probably cover that in another episode. But the bookkeeping piece, when you mention coding, that is not the job of an accountant, I believe, at least. That is a bookkeeper's job. And there's nothing wrong with bookkeepers. Bookkeepers have their place and they have their value, and there's some really, really, really good ones out there.
Yeah.
And the role of a bookkeeper is to make the accountant's job easier at the end of the day. A bookkeeper is somebody that would be in your Xero or MYOB or whatever software you're using on a regular basis. It might not be daily, it might be weekly, or it might be every couple of weeks, depending on what your business does. But they're processing the transactions, they're entering the invoices, they might be running the payroll, they're doing the transactional level stuff and making sure that there's the degree of accuracy in processing and there's a process being followed, and importantly, for people like us, that the paperwork side of things is taken care of, because at the accountant level, we can't get into the retail detail of every single piece of paperwork.
Yeah.
That's the bookkeeper. So if you've got an accountant that's processing your Xero, they're also being your bookkeeper.
Yeah, I think two good examples to illustrate this, mate, would be one, we had a client recently where they have a license which they can amortize. Now, the bookkeeping side of it could just be coding the transactions and basically recognizing the license that's paid for. The accounting side is, that can actually be amortized. We need to run a calculation that's going to put an expense onto our profit and loss, and that's going to decrease the profit. Now the tax conversation changes around what tax that client needs to be paying. And so there's that level of thinking. How does it impact tax and the accounting and the profitability of the business? And then there's the conversation with the client, hey, you're not profitable on paper. We've got a risk we could overdraw your shareholder current account by drawing out those profits. We need to think about that. Also, if you go for lending, you're probably going to need a letter from us or clarification to the lender that, hey, this expense here is on paper. It isn't actually a cash expense, but it's allowed under the tax rules, because if someone inexperienced sees that set of accounts, they're going to go, oh, you're not profitable. I don't think we should be lending you money. And so that's the level of thinking and sophistication that the accountant's going to bring to it. Second one, a bookkeeper or someone keeping the books might go, righto, I brought an asset, so I need to code that $10,000 motor vehicle expense to motor vehicles because they brought an asset. But an accountant thinks, and a good bookkeeper will pick this up too, to be fair, accountant will go, well, what was the true cost of that motor vehicle? Oh, it was $30,000. Oh, well, how come we've only got $10,000 as a transaction? Oh, we traded in the other vehicle. Well, now we need to sell off the other vehicle. We need to do a journal to recognize the $30,000 purchase and basically tidy that all up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run depreciation year to date so that we can see what the profitability is and see how this is going to impact. Oh, actually, you sold that vehicle for a lot higher than what it was actually worth. You're the one that you traded in. Did you know that you've actually got a $20,000 depreciation recovered form of income that needs to go into your accounts now? And so those things are going to impact tax. And that's the level of thinking that I think can help people see the difference between bookkeeping and accounting.
Yeah, I think the common theme coming through there is the bookkeeper should look after the paperwork and the cash side of transactions that are going through your accounting system, and the accountant will come along and look at the non-cash thinking that needs to be taken into account, wave a magic wand and do these things called journals, and then have a lens to tax, thinking about income tax and GST to make sure that those boxes are ticked.
So to go a step further from there, then what we see in the industry is that your accountant, then their role will be to tell you what tax you've got to pay based on what the IRD tell them. Now, if you think about it, if you're signed up to MyIR, the IRD now sends you notifications of how much tax you have to pay. If all your accountant is doing is just resending you those notifications or doing it through their system or via an email, you want to have a think, are they actually putting any thinking into that?
And how big is the bill?
Yes, because it might be accurate and that might be what you have to pay. But there are a lot of times where there are options and you may not have to pay that. I was working with a client yesterday, for instance, their turnover is going to drop by 50%. From 2024 to the 2025 financial year. They got a grunty provisional tax bill in August. First piece of advice is, I'm like, you are not going to be paying that because A, you can't afford to because you don't have any cash. So we know that this is real, and your P&L says that you're not actually profitable year to date. And we haven't even run depreciation. So we run depreciation, you definitely won't be. So when you're accountant and when the ID tell you in August to pay tax because you're obligated to, you're not paying it. Like, got it loud and clear. So that's the thinking that goes in when you're providing advice rather
Smart
than
thinking.
Yeah, rather than just, telling someone what the IRD is saying. But a lot of our industry, the role of the accountant is to just tell you what your obligation from the IRD is.
I'd probably summarize it and say box tickers.
Mate,
like the accountant will just look at what was done last year, change the date, change the amount, tick a box, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's very general. So accountants might not like that. Bit of a soft spot rather.
Hey, look, it happened a lot in auditing. I don't know how I know, but roll that. Hey, where's that work paper from last year? Roll that over. Hey, mate, you haven't changed the date. Oh, sorry. I'll just get that tidied up. Yeah, but I think that's really key, and we talk about it all the time. You actually want your tax to be based on your current year's trading, especially in a downturned economy.
Then to go talking about levels, so we've kind of talked about the bookkeeping level, the accountant level, and then there's a level on top of that. And that's the super thinking, value add, advisor. There's a stack load of terms. I'm refraining myself really hard from trying to say them all because they're just yuck. But it's essentially what the business owners are looking for, is going, well, you're giving me a whole heap of numbers. At this point, we've entered data and we've given you reports. But there's no meaning behind those reports explaining, hey, look, there's been this change in sales and then this change in gross profit. What does it all mean and why?
Yeah.
And that really, I think, is the secret that business owners are looking for, is a level of critical thinking to help them understand what the levers are in their business that they can ultimately adjust themselves to make themselves more profitable and have more cash.
Yeah, for sure, mate. Yeah, the advisory space is rife now. Everyone's doing advisory. We sometimes contemplate, do we change our name, to get away from it all?
Yeah,
Zig,
I mean, the discussions in the office, Kimmy Smith or Smith and Kimmy's,
Yeah.
I mean, we're throwing it all out there.
Yeah, we've thought about K and S, S and K, Kiss, just come up with some wet G Kiss, all sorts of different things to tie in our values. But can people actually add value to your business? That's the question you want to ask yourself. Can your accountant add value to your business? And maybe they don't need to. Maybe they just need to do the accounting side of things. But I think there is this perception that your accountant is going to be in the background running all these numbers, looking at your business, being like, oh, they should be doing this, they could be doing that. You're probably not going to get that, A, because you're not paying for it, and B, the person looking at your file might not even have the time, the capacity, or the skill set.
I'm pleased to see. I was actually going to say the nous, but probably the commercial acumen is the more appropriate way to say it. But I think the other thing to point out is a lot of business owners come up with the phrase, I don't know what I don't know. But at the same time, the accountant doesn't know what they don't know.
Love it.
And if you've got the right accountant and you've got the right relationship, and what we're talking about earlier in terms of everything that you want to look for in an accountant, you've got to then involve them in your business. And don't be afraid to pick up the phone, send them an email, send them a text, a WhatsApp message, whatever the communication style is that you've got with your accountant. And we're texting our clients, we're WhatsApping our clients, whatever works. And in some cases, we've slid into the old messenger DM to get hold of clients. It's like no holds barred, whatever's going to work, because everyone's got a different communication style. But there is part of your journey as much as you're part of theirs. So if you can involve them in every single decision, it will help your business get to where it needs to be, because they'll be better placed to give you the answers.
Yeah, I think it's similar to going to the doctor. Like, you don't just go there and sit there in the chair and be like, oh, well, you figure it out, mate. You should be telling me. You should be telling me I've got cholesterol. Like, how did you not pick up on that? And then they go, fuck, we haven't even run any tests, mate. What are you talking about? You haven't even paid us to do that. So you've got to take your problems to your accountant. And I've written down here, accountants are not mind readers. And I think a lot of business owners just assume that the accountant knows everything about the client, their business, and everything that's going on in there. They just won't be doing that, because you just can't do that at scale. Now, so you then have to take responsibility and go, right, I need to tell my accountant my problems. Where that gets hard is you don't know what those problems are. It's like when you go to the doctor and you're like, I know something's wrong, but I don't know what it is. That hasn't been itchy before. I knew that was the example you were going to use. No, that from that time. No,
well, okay. I was kind of thinking, like, at this stage, people are going, well, what's the boundary to problems that get shared?
Hey, you share whatever you feel comfortable sharing with, but keep them financial in the most part. But often the problems that you're facing in your life, you're probably taking them into your business too, and then creating financial problems too. So, if you've got a gambling problem in your personal life and then you're bleeding all the cash out of your business, saying this cash has got no money, well, does the business have no money, or does it not have any money because you're taking it all and gambling it? So we've got to address the actual problem, right? But the good question I think you can use is say to your business, say to your accountant that you feel like something is wrong, or it seems like something is wrong because of, and give them some reasoning, and then say, can you please help me understand this? Because what we see all the time is a client will come to us and say, oh, I need to look at my pricing based on what's happening with my depreciation. What's the rules with the rental property interest these days? And can I rent my house back to myself if my pet lives there, but I don't actually live there? And and you're just like, what the hell? Yeah. What's the problem here? What are you trying to solve?
And it reminds me of the common thing when we're talking to prospective clients, and they go, look, interested in exploring working with Next Advisory, coming on as a client. So, okay, what's some of your biggest pain points, and or what are the issues that you currently face with your current accountant? And a lot of business owners struggle to articulate what it is.
Yeah.
And I think it comes back to they haven't sat down and gone, oh, there's something wrong. Let me just sit on that for a minute, get really clear as to what it could look like, and then go to your current accountant and ask them. And so often I think that's probably one of the biggest issues is you don't have the confidence to go to your current accountant and ask them a question. And then I'll be coming back, well, why don't you have the confidence to ask the question? Is it a relationship problem, or are you afraid of feeling stupid? You'd be surprised some of the questions that we get asked.
Yep.
And my specialty in particular is the dumb questions because they suit me.
Yeah, we ask each of them ourselves.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point, mate. Because it's money related, people have fear of, I don't know if I should ask this because I feel like I should know it. We don't care. Like this is why we do these podcasts and stuff, to get people to the start line so that they can then go and ask that question of their accountant. And you might get the terminology wrong, but at least you're halfway there. And remember that an accountant is in and out of numbers all day. So money to them isn't as emotional as it is for you as a business owner. It's probably more transactional for us because we're looking at profit and losses all the time. We're looking under the hood. Oh, you've got $80,000 outstanding. You need to ring those debtors. Like it's overdue. Ring them. Like, oh shit, that's scary. We don't have the fear because it's not us ringing them.
No.
But the solution is clear. Like you need to ring them. Oh, we might put a process in place. So that's great. But in the meantime, we need that 50 grand and ring them
Pick
now.
up the phone.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Oh, what if they're pissed? Oh, it doesn't matter. Ring them. We need so, it's not emotional for us. So when you ring an accountant, don't be afraid or feel like they're going to be sitting there judging you, because it's probably just another question, just another phone call, just another conversation around money and transactions.
And I think with accountants, as a business owner, get really clear about what it is your expectation of the relationship and the role of the accountant is. And then go, well, if this is what my expectation is, what's my budget for that expectation? Then have that conversation with your accountant. If you want to be in touch with your accountant monthly, you want to get regular reporting, you want to have conversations about tax, you want to have them immensely involved in your business to help you get ahead, you've got to be prepared to pay for that.
Yeah.
Whereas at the other end of the spectrum, you might have an accountant that is just going to do your annual accounts and tax returns and then send you some just default notices saying, hey, you need to pay this to the IRD because the IRD is saying it's due. That's minimal involvement. It shouldn't cost you that much. But more often than not, majority of business owners are going, I only hear from my accountant once a year.
Yeah.
Well, what are you doing to then go, I want more from my accountant? Have the discussion with them and then be really clear about what that expectation is, what it looks like, and then can you afford it? Don't be afraid to have the conversation. And if you think, oh, gee, I'm not prepared to pay that much, then maybe you need to dial back your expectation.
Yeah.
Or go and look for another accountant.
Yeah, or think about it of, can you afford not to? Because I think that's a lot of the times people don't go and get the help that they need because they think they can't afford it, but then they go a year, 2 years, 3 years, and the problem doesn't get any better. It doesn't get solved. So the actual outcome or the answer back 3 years ago was you couldn't afford not to. What people could then do, I think, is, like you said before, there's that argument, oh, my accountant's not proactive. Well, then write down what proactive service is. Often with potential clients, Phil and I will ask them, what would make good service for you? And then we're jotting down notes to figure out, okay, what are the answers here? Like, what are they then frustrated with? Because their answer is probably the opposite of what they're currently getting. And there's a hack there for all business owners to actually ask people what they want help with and write those things down and see if you can actually solve them. If you can't, you don't need to try and solve it. Give it to somebody who can. But write down what would make proactive service, then you know what you want. And then if you have an accountant and you don't want to move, that's fine. Write down the problems that you have in your business. Write those down, go to your accountant, send them an email and say, I have these problems. List them out. Do you or someone you know how I can solve them? And your accountant will lean on their ego and they'll probably think, well, I want to do this because we could make some money out of this. Ask them then, okay, give me some examples of other clients or other situations where you've solved this. And they will fall on their sword very quickly if they can't actually solve your problem. Then you know if they're actually competent or not.
Spot on. Yep.
And if they're a GC, they might even say, I can't. As an example, we'll get questions around HR. We don't know.
Not our
our
cup of
space.
tea.
Here's who you need to go speak to.
We had an email yesterday from some person contacting us, and it was a referral from somebody else. Hey,
That's
we
right.
recommended you guys. Can you provide some tax advice around this stuff, some offshore stuff? I looked at it and I'm like, you know what? Nah, there's actually some people that are better placed, better skilled,
Yep.
are going to be able to do it a darn sight more efficient than we can. Here's their details. Off your rumble.
And they were stoked. I saw the response.
And the timeliness of the response.
Yeah.
Oh, that was going to be the one thing I was going to come back to. As part of that expectation that you sit down with your accountant, I think it would be appropriate to go, when you call or email them, how long do you want to wait before you hear back from them?
Yeah.
Are you happy to wait a week? Or do you want them to call you back within 24 hours or a couple of days? Like everyone's different. There's some things in business that are more important than others. How do you bring that real urgent stuff to the top to make your accountants realize, hey, I need an answer on this and I need it like really quickly because I've got a decision to make?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing to be mindful of too for business owners is that accountants are sort of encouraged not to give you the answers, or
I was just going to say lazy.
or we're told to de-risk and not be too specific with our advice.
That was going to, yes. The thing I was going to follow on from that in terms of expectation is have an expectation that your accountant can give you an answer.
Yeah.
And I think that talks to that point so often that they'll just play around the edges without giving you concrete like yes or no. Can I do this? Yes or no? Oh, well, you could do this or you could do that. Go away and have a think about it.
Yeah. Then you're still like, so what am I doing again?
Yeah. Whereas from what we've learned in the last, 8 years or so,
Yeah.
and then even longer than that, is clients just want to be told essentially, here's my question, what are my options? What would you recommend?
Yeah.
And you know what? Of all the times that we've said to a client, hey, look, we think you should go away and do this, out of all of these options, try this one based on what we know about you. Have we ever had anything come back and go, fuck, your guys' advice was shit?
That didn't work.
No.
Yeah. I mean, look, every now and then they might try it and go, oh, actually, we tried that, but then we decided to do this. Great. That's fine as well. But yeah, I think there's too many people that won't give you the advice you need because they're actually coming from a risk perspective. They're worried about it, but also they may not actually have the experience.
I was just going to, I know where this is going, because they're not business owners. Some of them might be franchise owners.
Ooh.
You big four people, if you're listening.
Oh, you went there.
Yeah, I have to. Well, they are.
Yeah.
Like, have they built a business?
Hey, mate, I'm staying out of this one.
No, like to be made a partner in an accounting firm, the process is you start as a grad, you become an intermediate, you become a senior, you become a senior manager, associate, whatever the pathway is, and then you've got the golden ticket, I'm now a partner.
Yeah.
Like in that process, what have you done to build a business?
Yeah. Well,
You're absolutely extremely technically proficient at what you do, and there is no question about how intelligent that person is in their area that they're a specialist in. And there's some very, very smart people out there. But in the role of small and medium businesses, where a lot of New Zealand businesses are and are looking for advice to get ahead, does their accountant have the chops and the experience as a business owner with some runs on the board that they can demonstrate, hey, I've been through this, and this is what I've done?
yeah. Yeah, there is, I think, a value in using an accountant who's actually a business owner who is out there doing stuff as well. And it might even be in their community, it might be in their own business, but actually building genuine business skills somewhere so that then they are a little bit more in tune with what's happening in the market, what's working, what isn't. And it's not to say that accountants can't do that because they can learn from their clients, for instance, but we know through years and years and decades and probably hundreds of years of the same advice is basically if you want what someone's got, go and ask them how they did it. Well, do you want to be an accounting partner owner? So you're probably not then going to go model like all of the stuff that they're doing.
No.
But can they help you build your business with specifics because they know what it takes to do that successfully with elements that cross over, but also then with the lessons of, okay, how your industry is different? Yep, that's great. But, there's a lot of technicians that don't actually want to or can't give you everyday or real business advice.
My top tip here would be if you're a business owner listening to this and you're like, oh, gee, that's hard hitting, and you want to find an accountant that has got those kind of skills that's going to be relatable, where to find those? It's going to be a young accountant because it is so easy to be an accountant in public practice these days.
Yeah.
It has never been easier to go out and start an accounting firm and just build up a business. It takes time, but It's possible. Back in the old days, it was blimmin' hard to go out there and have a crack at your own. So everyone went down that, I've got to become a partner in an accounting firm.
Yeah.
So the next part of that top tip would be stay away from national brands. And we know who they all are. We're not going to name names, but those national branded accounting firms wouldn't have a lot of people in there that are business owners. Yes, there's some really smart technical expertise, and that suits some really big businesses. But at the SME scale and level, where you want relatable business advice that's timely and makes sense, go and hunt out those accountants that are there, and you'll probably find it in that younger demographic, I reckon.
Love that, mate. We've got one who we talk with often. They've got an e-commerce business and an accounting business. They run them side by side. Quite often we'll get an e-commerce client that we're not wanting to get involved with. We're like, go and speak to this person. They got real life experience and they're an accountant.
Yep.
Like, oh my God, that's amazing. We're like, yep, it's a reality. It can happen. Yeah. The other thing I think, mate, the little hack that people can do, we love a hack, don't we?
We love a hack.
We all loves a hack. Go and have a look at your accountant's Google reviews. They don't exist.
Now, can I get my phone water out?
But what it does is it actually gives you in their client's words how they've helped them. Because a testimonial, you're normally like, oh, could you write a testimonial about this? And like, oh, we just changed a couple of words and, whip these shit, a testimonial. I think the trust in testimonials on a website is, especially written ones. Yeah. But a Google review, you're sort of getting a high level warts and all. Okay, you can't go and unless you're standing there with them typing it up, you've got to then rely on them to put into their words how they've been able to help you.
Top tip there would be, if you're looking for a new accountant, it would be what other industry experience do you have that relates to my business? Do you have any other clients that are currently in this industry? And would you be happy for me to talk to them about your services and how you work before coming on as a client?
Yeah. We've had clients that have done that with us.
Yep.
And I say to them, I'm like, you can do that, but I can tell you that they're going to tell you should join. So like you can waste their time and your own and we can start faster.
Confidence.
Yeah. If I know that we can definitely solve the problem. But I'm like, if you want to do it, like go for it. But I'm like, here's also a 30-minute YouTube interview with 3 different clients, for instance. You can listen to those. You can take their lessons as well for free.
Gee, the collateral that is out there from Next Advisory is sensational. But the only reason I bring that up is I said that exact same thing to a potential client the other day. They're on the phone. They're in a particular industry, one that I know we've got a fair degree of confidence on. And it's like, hey, you can go and talk to this, and this client who are in your industry and do similar things. And I'm pretty confident they're going to say exactly what I've said to you.
Nice. Here's how I'd summarize it, mate. An accountant is there to keep you compliant. An accountant who does business advisory, if they actually know what they're doing, they're there to save you money and solve you problems or help you make more money.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But a lot of people think that their accountant's going to do the advisory. So why didn't they tell me I could have done that with my vehicle? Why didn't they tell me this? Oh, they don't give me any tips around increasing my pricing, or that they should have told me my margins have been going down. Unless you're paying them advisory fees to go and look at that stuff, they probably ain't looking at it.
And I think just to chuck a spanner in the works here while we talk about accountants, your accountant doesn't have to be the advisor. So the accountant can just do the compliance. There's plenty of other people out there that call themselves business advisors. Again, like finding an accountant, finding somebody that can add value to your business is no different. Are they relatable? Have they got the skills? Have they got the proven track record? All those bits and pieces that we're previously talking about, they don't have to be an accountant.
That's right.
They've just got to understand business. But from what we see, it normally pays to have the two interact with each other, because some of these business advisors don't necessarily understand massive details of finance and numbers like an accountant does. So that's where they can become complementary. But there is other people out there, but just start having the conversation, get clear on what it is that you're looking for, set the expectation and go shopping.
Yeah, it's a very good point, mate. And that's where a good accountant that can give good business advice, how it becomes so important. And often we'll say this to prospects where we're not their accountant and we don't have access to their Xero. We say we can't do business planning with you or advisory work without your numbers, because we're not going to tell you, charge on, let's go hire that extra person. You said you wanted to scale. Okay, well, we need a job advert for 3 people. We want to have a look at the numbers and see, oh shit, you're 60 grand overdue in tax. Okay, We need to put that on a store arrangement. We need to plan around that. Now we need a cash flow plan, for instance. Or your margins aren't actually working. So we need to cross that information over before sending you off on a path. And I think that's the sweet spot that accountants have and can play in that a lot of business coaches and business consultants can't, because they don't actually understand the numbers. And if you think a business coach or consultant is really good, ask them outright. How much is the most you've ever made in a year? And how much tax did you have to pay? Yeah, but ask them. So then start understanding some financial nous and ask them some questions. How did you manage with people who didn't pay you? Tell me how a profit and loss works. Tell me how a balance sheet works. Hey, how does provisional tax planning work? If you don't understand that stuff, often a good plan from a business coach or a consultant without understanding the impact of the cash, it can fuck you. Sorry to use that language.
Yeah, that's some strong language, which we encourage on this podcast. But you're not wrong. We're kind of jumping around a little bit here now as we get to the end, but there have been instances in the past where we've seen external people helping business owners saying, go ahead and charge in and do this and do that without understanding the cash flow impact.
Yeah.
And it absolutely cooks the business.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here banging our heads on the table going, man, we can see this clear as day.
Yep.
Because we understand the numbers. The person on the other side doesn't. What a shame.
And I think a good example of that very quickly for people to understand is basically go and buy that equipment. Go get the digger. 100%. Yeah, you've got 80 grand sitting there. Go and do it. Knock, knock from accountant. Hey, you've got tax to pay. You're also overdue. You're now getting penalties. You've missed your terminal tax from the year before. You've got 3 grand of penalties. Those are not tax deductible. Where's all your cash gone? Oh, I just paid 80 grand cash for a digger. Who told you to do that? Oh, well, we've got a business coach. They're epic. They've done heaps in our industry. They're one of the authorities in the space, and they told us to buy a digger.
God, they should be bloody grateful said to buy a digger, not a ranger.
I see today, mate, I think that the cops are now using rangers. Is that right?
Really? I didn't know that.
I saw New Zealand's most popular vehicle will now be a police car, and I didn't read the article, but I assumed that must be a ranger.
Wow, sign me up. Wow, a ranger with blue and white, red and blue flashing lights.
They get you across the line.
Yes, how good.
Yeah. That's been a lot of fun, mate. And I think we've actually brought a lot of life to the role of the accountant, and not to then pump up the accountants out there that are listening too. Remember that you are in the sweet spot where strategy crosses over finance, and that is a very, very unique position when you can understand that. So that's your opportunity if you don't want to be a tick box, boring as batshit, big branded, franchised accounting partner.
Got that. What a way to end.
Yeah, let's get out of here.